Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Ellen Treppe, and on behalf of Jefferson's Office of Alumni Relations, I want to thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Mindfulness Skills and Leadership. Today, we are joined by Dr. Virginia O'Hare, who will provide information about how to integrate a mindfulness practice in order to be a better leader in the workplace. Before we get started, I just wanted to note that following today's presentation, we should have a little time to address your questions. So throughout the program, please feel free to submit those using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. O'Hare. Take it away, Dr. O'Hare.
Thank you so much for inviting me to give this talk. As you can see, I'm here at home in my kitchen. So I'm so excited to talk with you all about mindfulness skills for leaders. So I gave a similar talk about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. It's hard to know with the COVID time warp, to Jefferson executive leaders. And after that, I was approached by the alumni office to see if this could be a talk that maybe alumni would be interested in. And yeah, please don't hesitate to ask questions. Feel free to contact me afterwards by email if you have any questions too. So this is me. I am a clinical psychologist with expertise in behavioral medicine, and I've been trained in a lot of treatments, talk therapies that are empirically supported for all sorts of problems, but all have a common component of acceptance and mindfulness. And I'm also the director of Jefferson Center City Clinic for Behavioral Medicine. This is also me. When it's not COVID, I love goat yoga. And since COVID, I've really found my passion in teaching mindfulness and coping skills to people at all levels of the Jefferson enterprise. So what we're going to talk about today is what is mindfulness, why practice mindfulness as leaders, kind of how to make meaning at work by engaging in this kind of big why thought experiment. And then we'll talk about mindfulness practice for resilience in leadership and mindfulness techniques for effective leadership during an ongoing crisis, such as COVID and beyond, and then developing your own practice, even just 5 minutes a day. So let's kind of start with debunking some myths. So what is mindfulness? It's not a cult. There's no religious affiliation. It's not prayer, although praying can certainly be mindful. You don't have to be sitting down. You don't have to be having your eyes closed. Having a blank mind is not the goal. So if you have a very active mind, that's just fine. It doesn't have to be relaxing. In fact, for a lot of us, kind of sitting and calming the mind can actually be quite stressful, especially at first. No om needed. So what is it? It's paying attention. Mindfulness is paying attention with full conscious awareness so that you can access your wisest, kind of most effective self when making decisions and be as unbiased as possible, focusing on what's happening now versus kind of getting stressed out about future worries or being haunted by things that have happened in the past. So I'd like to think of this as like shining the light of attention on what you choose to focus your mind on. And especially for us as leaders, there can just be a lot of moving parts, and being able to choose what you focus your attention on can give huge emotional freedom. So mindful leaders have mastered two specifics of processing. So two specific ways of processing information. So one is the ability to kind of personally separate, take a step back from stressful events. So kind of not taking them personally, not letting an emotional response overwhelm. And then also the ability to control reactions to threats or difficult situations. So, this is kind of, mindfulness can get you a little bit of an arm's length from intense emotions so that you're able to notice yourself having an emotion rather than be kind of consumed by emotion. And that, that distance can be exactly what's needed to then make, effective leadership decisions. Mindfulness is also an attitude. So you can bring a mindful lens to your practice and also to your kind of daily lives at work and at home. Mindfulness and leadership, easier said than done. So I have this example, which I'll tell you, but I've got an even more relevant example that just happened. So this example was before giving my mindfulness talk to Jefferson executives, I met with the kind of team that was going to work with me to help with the audio visuals. And I I think they might have been a bit horrified because I was like shoving peanut butter toast in my face in order to like ingest enough food to stay alive before giving this talk about mindfulness, including the benefits of mindful eating. So it's often easier said than done. Right before this talk, I logged on 10 minutes early as the alumni committee had asked me to do, and I'd said, bad news, I still have to make and eat my lunch before the talk, but don't worry, we've got 10 whole minutes. So again, this idea of, sometimes the best intentions of being mindful and present are going to have to go out the door when the realities of all of the balls that we're juggling as leaders, kind of collide. So what is mindfulness? It's learning to be in control of your mind instead of letting your mind be in control of you. So it's like acting with intention rather than being on autopilot. Choosing to focus on this moment, right here, right now, instead of getting pulled towards past issues or future worries. So mindfulness is kind of the key to not getting hijacked by emotion. So I imagine I kind of have this visual of myself driving along in my car, and then all of a sudden, some sort of bump in the road happens, like is inevitable, especially during a global pandemic. There's a lot more of these bumps than usual. And there's kind of a decision point where we could get hijacked by painful emotions. And mindfulness kind of allows a little bit of a distance so that we can notice an urge to, notice an emotion coming on, notice an urge to react, and then choose kind of from like more like our highest self, from our frontal lobe engaged self, what we want to do instead of sort of relying on rat brain, lizard brain to just like default act. And mindfulness is also deciding to maintain a non-judgmental stance and it's kind of accepting what is. It is what it is. So it's a skill that requires practice. Anyone can do this. So you might be telling yourself, oh, my mind is too active to be mindful. So that definitely used to be me. And anyone can learn this skill. That said, it requires unlearning a lot of what our society demands of us. So like multitasking, divided attention. I think about all the times when I'm like, my kids are talking to me, but I'm also like watching something on TV and on my phone. And sometimes I got my laptop open at the same time. And it's just sort of everything's happening all at once. And mindfulness would be saying like one thing in the moment, focus your attention just on one thing. So this is a skill you can do at work and at home, and a skill that can make you a more effective leader. So you might be thinking, I've got so many things to keep track of. I need to multitask, and that's okay. So you can multitask mindfully. So that's focusing fully on one task and then switch your attention, focus fully on the next task. So I often have lots of things going on simultaneously. However, if I'm with a patient, I'm focused just on the patient. And then maybe I've got to send emails. I'm focused just on sending the emails. While I was eating the avocado toast in the 5 minutes before this talk, that's all I was doing, being present, noticing the avocado toast. It was delicious. So focus on one thing and then switch your attention to the next thing and be glued mentally to that task. So this kind of full attention on the one task, even if then you're switching your full attention to the next task, is really effective in reducing kind of mindless or careless errors, which are often related to doing two things at once. So why practice mindfulness in leadership? The majority of Fortune 500 leaders have a regular mindfulness practice. I love the show Billions. All of the successful characters on Billions have a mindfulness practice, which I just love that that's being shown in such like powerful leaders. And research supports that mindfulness really helps us with all sorts of issues. And I've got references at the end for anyone who wants to do a deeper dive into the vast body of literature behind mindfulness. And when you are looking at the mindfulness literature, there's a couple of acronyms to be aware of. MBSR, which I'm trained in, is mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's like a whole sort of comprehensive program that's also offered here at Jefferson at the Myrna Brand Institute. And then there's also MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which I'm also trained in, which is a sort of approach to like, regular talk therapy, focusing on mindfulness. So mindfulness, whether MBSR or MBCT, is associated with improvements in self-reported mental health among healthy adults, and has also been shown to prevent depressive relapse among adults with a history of depression. It can improve tolerance of chronic pain and can improve stress-related disease outcomes in other chronic health conditions. So that's a lot of what we see at my clinic is we work with a lot of patients with chronic health conditions, including like cancer, HIV, cystic fibrosis, other lung diseases, and help people to kind of focus on what they want to be about and get a little bit of space from painful emotions through mindfulness. And then also, this is pretty cool. So structural and functional neurological differences can be found on fMRIs and on MRIs between long-term meditators and non-meditators. So if you want to learn more about those topics, check out the reference section at the end. But let's move on just in the interest of time. So our typical practice in mindfulness meditation is, I'm going to tell you what it is, and then we'll have some chances to practice throughout the rest of today's talk. So getting in a comfortable position, usually we want to sit in a posture that supports alertness. You don't want to be all kind of slumped over and like half falling asleep. You want to be like sitting up, feet flat on the floor, back straight, sitting still, breathing normally. Sounds are going to happen. So let go of the myth that situation has to be perfect in order for mindfulness to happen. Otherwise, it'll just never happen. I've got the full catastrophe here. I've got dogs scratching to be in and out. I've got patients who might be like getting up with me, paging me with emergencies, have kids, they're in school right now, thank God. I've got my husband, I've got like all sorts of things going on. If I waited for calm, I would never meditate. So distractions are going to happen. Sounds are going to happen. Life happens. Just notice them. Noticing your breath. When your mind wanders, then just notice it without judgment and bring it back. So there's this analogy that a commercial airliner is off course 99% of the time. So it's kind of horrifying to think about. But yeah, 99% of the time it's off course. And there's the computer course correcting. We don't notice that as passengers, but this is constantly happening. Course correct. Same thing with mindfulness. Our minds might wander 500 times during a 5-minute meditation. And that's okay. That's 500 opportunities that you have to bring it back to the present moment. So that act of bringing your mind back, that is mindfulness. So the goal isn't to have no thoughts. The goal isn't to have a calm mind. The goal is when your mind wanders, notice and bring it back. So let's do one right now. We're going to do this one that's called a mini practice. So go ahead, and I'm aware people might be eating their lunch. People might be, out and about. Maybe you're driving. If so, don't close your eyes. But whatever capacity you're in, let's give this a try. And again, you can do this with your eyes open. Many, many times I'm practicing mindfulness during stressful meetings, during, kind of big decisions that need to be made at work. And this can be done with eyes open. No one will ever know. So step one of the mini practice is just notice tension in your body. Take a breath. And then as you breathe out, think the word relax. And just imagine a wave of relaxation flowing down through your body. Relaxing your head, relaxing your jaw, relaxing your shoulders, relaxing your upper back, mid back, lower back, relaxing your chest and stomach, relaxing your seat, your thighs, your calves, your knees, relaxing your ankles and feet. And then just imagine this whole wave of relaxation flowing down through your body and out your feet. And then take another breath. And as you breathe out, think the word relax. And then you go back to your regular life. Now, ideally, if we're in person, I'd give you a sheet of sticky stars or sticky dots, and you would stick these around your workplace, around your home. And whenever you see one of these dots, you stop what you're doing and you do a mini practice. It takes like 30 to 60 seconds. And if you can get up to 15 to 20 of these a day, then tension will be reduced. Also, if you're like me and kind of a snacker, my home office is in my kitchen, right? Disaster zone. You could stick these stickies, these like little reminders to do a mini practice on places where you might be mindlessly snacking, a fridge, cupboards, that sort of thing. And same thing, you notice that the sticker, take a breath, do your mini practice. I have one in my office. I have one on my phone at work because I actually just got dinged this morning on like sending a hasty email. I like to get things done right away. And sometimes I'll send an email, I'm like, here's everyone's task, go do it. And then I realize like, oh, was that possibly like a kind of impulsive action? So thinking about, before sending off that email, before making a phone call that maybe you regret or maybe is impulsive, could you do a mini practice and like just get a little bit of distance from whatever's going on and kind of tap in again to like kind of your more frontal lobe, like higher functioning self, less like rat and lizard brain. So there's a ton of documented benefits of mindfulness in leadership. Increased productivity, creativity, increased ability to self-regulate, direct attention, switch strategies. And then this reduction in what I was talking about, this like knee-jerk behavior linked to poor decision-making that can really be damaging to relationships. Increased density of gray matter in the brain, especially in areas essential for focus, memory, compassion, decreased blood pressure, decreased cortisol stress response, decreased depression, and also improved immunity. I mean, how great is that, especially during a pandemic? Improved emotional stability, sleep quality, resilience. And there's even some evidence that there can be offset in age-related cognitive decline associated with a regular mindfulness practice. And then really, why practice mindfulness for us in leadership? So with lots of moving parts and tasks to take care of and keep track of, especially during pandemic and aftermath, mindfulness can reduce cognitive errors and increase focus. Given that, we've been under a lot of stressors for a long time, a regular mindfulness practice can bring down stress level. So just doing one of those mini practices, you might get a little reprieve, a little like, oh, nice, kind of a ray of sunshine. But if you practice every single day, you'll notice a reduction in stress response. And then learning these practices as leaders can really help us also to support our teams and kind of shift our work culture towards mental wellness. I know I'm often asked to give talks to hospital teams who are having trouble kind of re-entering back to sort of like normal functioning. And I kind of get this image in my brain of, trying to stuff a sleeping bag back into those stupid little like polyester bags that it comes in. There's just no way to get it back in. Like, who knows how it was in there in the first place? So thinking about going back to the pre-COVID lives that we've led of, commuting and juggling everything during current circumstances where, maybe there's no school bus because of COVID, or maybe there's, no aftercare program, or maybe your kid has to quarantine, or, maybe you don't have kids, but you're worrying about other stressors, property values have increased, et cetera. So thinking about all of those things and how do we kind of get back to normal life, having this culture of mindfulness in our own work teams can really help to ease kind of tensions, cattiness, snipping at each other, and just kind of dysfunctional team dynamics. So kind of reality check. COVID might have eroded our teams. The long-lasting and exhausting and constantly changing nature of the pandemic might have really taken a magnifying glass to some like rifts or cracks or dynamics in our team that might, have become more problematic. And effective mindful leadership from you can help to reset this. So I'm not thinking about get back to normal, but thinking about like enhanced wellness, enhanced team synergy. Let's not stuff that sleeping bag back into its bag. Let's think about another way to approach things. And being mindful can really help us know when our employees are suffering. So people will feel more comfortable, coming to you when they make mistakes if you're a kind of more grounded, mindful leader. Mistakes will be reduced without multitasking, and people will feel more psychologically safe. So you think about like, what's the antidote to toxic work environment? Honestly, an attitude of mindfulness and leadership can do wonders to reset things. So let's think about when to practice mindfulness and leadership. What about when a beloved employee quits and you're devastated, maybe you're angry, or feel too numb to feel anything, when bureaucracy is slowing change to a snail's pace and you're just wanting action right now, when everything is uncertain, you're working from home in person, or your staff working from home, or people quitting, is there turnover, are people disgruntled? Like who actually likes change? I mean, of course, like we're good at adapting, but and maybe there's some of you who really thrive in change. I thought that I was someone who embraces change, but really I know it's exhausting. And when you're thinking about when you're like this close to flipping out, if you hear one more question about masking or vaxing or any of that, when you're so burned out that nothing feels like anything anymore, so over COVID that you just can't. And with this constant stream of unending tasks, just feels like too much. These are all great times to practice mindfulness and leadership. So sort of shorthand here is when you need this skill is honestly going to be when you really don't feel like you have time for it. So first, I really want to challenge people to think about connecting with your big why. So this is your first mindfulness mission right now. Take a moment, think about why did you become a leader? What motivates you to do your job well? And what makes it worth the effort you take? So I think about this as like your big why. Why are you doing what you're doing right now? So feel free. I don't know if you have the ability to put things in the chat or in the Q&A or wherever, but thinking about your big why. If possible, pull out a piece of paper or open a note on your phone and jot down your big why. And if not, just kind of keep it in your mind. So regular mindfulness practice helps us access wise mind. So wise mind is, you think about there's 3 states of mind. Emotion mind, where like emotions are in control. This is the state of mind that you want to be in. Like if you're watching a horror movie, you don't want to be thinking about all of the effects. You want to just be in it. Or if you're on a roller coaster, you really want to be embracing kind of the ups and downs and all of that. Or if you're falling in love, you don't want to be thinking about, well, X% of relationships and divorce. When you're, adopting a puppy, you don't want to be thinking about like, oh, this dog is only going to live X number of years, or how am I going to take care of this dog? Like you think about times when it's great to be in emotion mind. And then on the other side, there's reasonable mind. So reasonable mind, where emotion mind is like hot. Reasonable mind is more cool, calculating. That's a state of mind that you want to maybe be in if you're like doing your taxes, doing an Excel spreadsheet. If you're kind of thinking about, rational reasons why this idea makes sense. So if you're a Star Trek fan, then this is kind of more of like the Mr. Spock or Mr. Data reasonable mind, sorry. And then wise mind is the synthesis of the two. So wise mind is where you get the data from your emotions and the data from reasonable mind. And then you're able to synthesize these together into this place of, you kind of think of it as like your seat of intuition, a place where you know what's right. And practicing mindfulness helps us to balance emotion mind and reasonable mind in order to access wise mind. So take a moment to think to yourself, when a stress or crisis comes, what's your default? I think about, so I was raised by Brits, and my whole family's from England. There was just a lot of like stiff upper lip, like do the next thing, kind of keep it moving. So in a crisis, I'm the person who's like, I've got a 6-point plan for making sure that we get through this. And then it's not until quite a lot later that this like emotional defrost will hit, and then the emotion of the situation will hit me. So I tend more towards reasonable mind in a crisis. And so for me, the task of wise mind is to really try to tap into like, what are emotions telling me? What's the data there that I might be sort of squashing down? For a lot of folks, though, they might be an emotion mind in a crisis, in which case the task of wise mind is also to balance in the kind of reasonable, objective, rational data at the same time. So wise mind is also, you can think of it as like effective leader mind. So wise mind is something within yourself. We all have it. So if you're thinking like, mine got, exported. No, you do have this. So it's a place within yourself where you know something to be true or valid. And it's where you can balance information from reasonable mind and information from emotion mind, where you know something in like a peaceful, centered way, kind of similar to intuition. Everyone has this, no one's in wise mind all the time. So think about how can you access wise mind? For me, I meditate in order to access wise mind. So following the breath, that might be a way, focusing on your belly or between your eyes, or having a mantra, like breathe in wise, breathe out mind, or a mantra of like just this moment. Maybe there's a felt sense, or this is what I do, taking a few moments to do a quick mindfulness practice. I'll notice that the issue that is really kind of getting under my skin, that's making me think like I'm too old to work with these trainees, or I can't connect with the Gen Zs, or those sorts of issues where I'm thinking like that's it, like this is my last year doing this, like I'm too disconnected from the population that I'm training. I'll sit and do a meditation, and then I'm like 5 minutes later, it's kind of like the slate is wiped clean. There's really something pretty amazing about this. And again, I have a regular practice, so I do sit daily. But this idea of accessing wise mind as a way to get out of the kind of lizard brain, rat brain, kind of knee jerk desire just to kind of get rid of painful emotion. So mindfulness is great because on the one hand, it allows you to contact emotions and use the data from emotion, and at the same time, get a little bit of distance from that emotion so that it's not consuming you. So thinking about mindfulness in the heat of the moment, accessing wise mind to support your employees skillfully. So thinking about it's the end of the day, you're exhausted, you're overwhelmed, you got to go home and do even more work. And then an employee, and yes, that same employee again, is coming to you with an urgent complaint. This is their 5th complaint in the month. You're ready to yell at them like, no, just leave me alone. But that would likely result in poor team morale, more complaints, maybe against you. So thinking about how can you use mindfulness how can you use wise mind to deal with this situation effectively? So this is exactly the sort of scenario where for me, I need to take a moment, get into my kind of wise mind state, which maybe I can afford 5 minutes meditation practice. Maybe I can't. Maybe I got to do something like try to remember that sort of felt state of wise mind. And again, the more you practice, the easier it is to access. So are you ready to flip? If so, you're not alone. So for many of us, emotions including like anger, rage, full-fledged freak out might be way closer to the surface than usual. And it could be that what we're feeling is in the moment is kind of just the tip of the iceberg. So we've all likely had, one of the worst like years, 19 months, however long this has been of our lives. So dealing with constant pressure, uncertainty, crisis, and sure, we've adapted, like we're humans, that's what we do. And at the same time, the emotional toll really builds up. So when we want to blow up or snap or snark or quit in reaction to a coworker's passing comment, it can really help to kind of connect the dots, to notice like you're not just overreacting to this one thing, that what you're reacting to could be a sort of whole trail of stepping stones of built up emotions, of uncertainty, of grief, of sadness, of fear. So keep in mind that what you're feeling might be the reaction to accumulated stress of the past like year and a half, almost 2 years. I think about really we're stretched so thin that it's easy for something minor to rip us. And taking a step back and realizing all that we're dealing with can really help us gain some perspective and maybe even diffuse some rage. So we're going to do right now a mindfulness in the heat of the moment. So this is great. I'll kind of walk you through what we're going to do and then we'll do it. So this is great for when you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, about to blow up. We take a breath with awareness. We're going to notice it coming in and out of your nose. And then when your mind wanders, bring it back. Remember the airplane. It's off course 99% of the time. And our job is to bring it back, bring it back. The goal isn't to have no thoughts, to have no distractions. No, that's impossible. The goal is to notice the distraction and bring it back. That's the act of mindfulness. So go ahead and sit in a posture that supports alertness to the best, of your ability. Maybe you're in a situation where it's hard to do this, but see if you can have your feet flat on the floor, maybe roll your shoulders back so your spine is straight. And you can do this eyes open or closed. So I'm going to close my eyes for this one. And find a place where you can notice your breath. Maybe in the inside of your nose, or maybe in the back of your throat, or maybe in the rise and fall of your chest, or the rise and fall of your stomach. And as you breathe in, think to yourself, just this moment. And as you breathe out, think to yourself, just this breath. And then breathe in, just this moment. And on your own time, breathe out, just this breath. And when your mind wanders, just gently, without judgment, bring it back to noticing your breath, breathing in just this moment, breathing out just this breath. And let's practice for a minute. When your mind wanders, just gently bring it back to breathing in just this moment, breathing out just this breath. And then go ahead and open your eyes if you had them closed. And then notice, are you telling yourself something that doesn't serve you? I can't do this. This is boring. This is stupid. I'll do it later. I don't have time. My brain doesn't work this way. If so, see if you could hold that thought kind of lightly, like you would a butterfly, not like attaching to it. Just kind of hold it lightly. And maybe you're thinking, my mind wanders too much. Why is my mind doing this? Why aren't I better at this? I should be able to control my mind, other judgments. And if so, same thing. See if you can just kind of let those go. Like imagine those like a puppy or a baby or a toddler, like pulling at the bottom of your pants. You're not going to kick this puppy. You're going to be like, oh, of course, come along. Of course you want to get outside. Of course you want, more food. Your mind is kind of like that, right? It's like puppy mind. It wants to go all over the place. That's what healthy minds do. So without judging, just kind of notice when your mind wanders and gently bring it back. So, here's another just this moment. So think about goldfish mind. So goldfish are infamous for having 3-second memories. Although when I was planning this talk, I Googled this just to fact check because I like to be accurate. And it actually turns out that more recent science shows this is not true. So if you want to further geek out on goldfish memory, check that link. But hey, they're infamous for short memories. We'll stick with that for this analogy. So you can use mindfulness to live according to your big why and kind of wipe the slate clean, goldfish mind, before conducting performance reviews, before listening to a coworker complain about the same staffing issue again and again, before giving corrective feedback for what might feel like the 100th time, before teaching about a topic or technique that resulted in a lot of confusion last year. So thinking about how can we use goldfish mind to sort of wipe the slate clean from how things might have gone in the past or from our fears about how things might go in the future. Now, there are going to be some situations where you don't want to use goldfish mind, where it's super important to glue yourself to outcomes from past, results from past behavior, outcomes from past attempts at this one solution. And then there are going to be other times where, it's time to conduct a performance review, and that employee that you're conducting the review for, they do some stupid mistake that you're like, oh no, how do we not let that color the whole review? This is where the goldfish mind comes in. Just this moment, just be here now. Don't get sucked into the past. Don't get hijacked by worries about the present. So when you find yourself anticipating how a conversation or a didactic or a rounding will go based on previous stressful experiences, you can mindfully make the decision to wipe the slate clean of just judgments from the past. So wiping the slate clean of worries about the future, focusing just on this moment, the interaction happening in the present moment. So let's give ourselves and our employees the grace of kind of hitting the reset button and letting go of some bygones, allowing some room for new behavior. I feel like the goldfish mind of just this moment is so key to parenting, to staying in a romantic partnership. There's got to be some grace of allowing room for new behavior, just this moment. So then we've got a couple more before we end. Mindfulness techniques for effective leadership during an ongoing crisis, which could be COVID or it could be staffing issues or, really could be anything. And so these techniques are radical acceptance, turning the mind, and willingness. So radical acceptance is this wholehearted acceptance of the current situation from deep within. It doesn't mean condoning it, liking it, approving of it. So this concept is illustrated beautifully in Viktor Frankl's life-changing book, Man's Search for Meaning, where he describes his own experience of surviving the Holocaust in a concentration camp, where when many, many of his friends and compatriots died by running against electric fence because circumstances were just too atrocious and inhumane to endure. And he chose to endure because he was hell-bent on reuniting with his family at the end. So people who were lucky and fully, wholeheartedly accepted, this is the situation. I don't like it. It's terrible. It's not just. It's not right. And this is the hand that is currently on the table. How can I survive? How can I make it through? So similarly, we can think about, imagine being sentenced to jail for 20 years for a crime you didn't commit. It gets taken to the highest courts of appeal, and no appeal. You are going to jail for 20 years for a crime you didn't commit. Maybe at first you're livid, you're yelling, it's not fair, you're acting out, which is only making things worse for yourself. And then maybe you fully, wholeheartedly accept, all right, this isn't right. It's not just, I don't like it. I don't approve of it. And it is what it is. How am I going to use this? How am I going to survive? How am I going to get through? So maybe you learn another language. Maybe you work on physical fitness. Maybe you read a lot of books. Who knows? So that's the idea with radical acceptance is you've been dealt this hand. How are you going to survive? How are you going to get through? How are you going to wholeheartedly accept this? And it's not a one and done like flipping a switch. It requires again and again, turning your mind again and again towards willingness to endure. So your mind will want to go to acting against. Think of the early days of COVID, in March, all of 2020, all the hospitals are full and just total panic stations, absolute epic disaster. So many, many times I remember waking up and being like, I just can't. No, I can't. This isn't happening. I can't. And so turning the mind again and again towards willingness to endure, willingness to do the next right thing. And willingness is doing what's needed in the situation. So kind of the analogy is, imagine that you're in a broken batting cage and baseballs are getting hurled by the machine at your face. There's no way to get rid of all of them. They're hitting you, they're pelting you, and no matter what you do, if you crouch in the corner, they're just all coming at you. So willingness might be, all right, I can't get them all, but I'm going to swing. And maybe I can keep some of them away from my face. Maybe I can swing and not get a head injury. Maybe if I swing, I'll hit 20% of them, 30% of them. Anything's better than nothing. So think about, how can you show willingness to do what is needed with your team? And then we've got like a kind of a physical exercise for radical acceptance and willingness with your whole body. So this is really great and it doesn't have to be in extreme situations like we just talked about. This can also be, in a meeting where there's a lot of mansplaining happening, a meeting maybe where you're getting talked over a lot, or, a stressful situation where maybe you're getting feedback that's hard to hear, or maybe, kind of post-event review of what went wrong, including what went wrong on your side of the street. Situations where you might be feeling defensive, angry, not wanting to hear it, wanting to run out, wanting to leave. So what can we do instead? And this is the beauty of this, is no one needs to know that you're doing this. So half smile and willing hands. There's this way of kind of changing your physiology. So we're not thinking our way out of this kind of like lizard brain, rat brain of like fight or flight. I'm at a meeting where I'm getting criticized. My rat brain is perceiving this as a threat to my life. I need to leave. No, how can we kind of get back into our higher functioning self? So willing hands, go ahead, try this right now if you're able. Have your hands in your lap, like in the picture on the right. Hands open, not like tense, just kind of open hands in your lap. And then the half smile is turning the corners of your mouth up, like you would see on the Mona Lisa or on a Buddha. And this isn't one of those like, oh, you'd look pretty if you smile. No, this isn't a communication to others. This is just for you. So there was a study, and keep on with your willing hands while we're hearing about this. There was a study, let me see about a pen, good, of undergrads who watched a movie, some of them with a pen like this in their mouth, and others with a pen like this between their nose and upper lip. The ones who had the pen in their mouth, they tended to laugh more often during this film. So your facial expression all facial expressions are like hardwired to emotions. You can actually create a more willing, open, kind of lighter emotional state by having a half smile or even a full smile. And the half smile, I love it because people don't usually notice it. So there you are in your meeting with your half smile in your willing hands. And it's just a way to kind of change your physiology out of fight or flight back into kind of your more processing self. And then thinking about how to find balance in leadership. So one is thinking about putting on your oxygen mask before you're putting on the one of the person next to you. So remember air travel that we used to like to do back in the day, pre-COVID. So as a leader, you need to attend to your emotional needs first in order to deal most effectively with your employees. And then I want to talk about two types of mindfulness practice. There's sitting under the waterfall and walking through the mist. So sitting under the waterfall, that's a deliberate practice where you've decided to focus your attention on one thing. It could be the breath, sitting for a period of time, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. And when your mind wanders, bringing it back again and again and again, just like the exercise that we did. Then there's walking through the mist. And that's kind of an attitude of mindful noticing. So maybe while you're eating food, you're having a few bites where you don't do anything else. You just notice and savor. Maybe while you're crafting or cooking or washing dishes, you're just fully focused on that one thing. You know, I love crochet, and like while I'm doing those stitches, I'm just focused on that one thing. I love the same thing with weeding in the garden, like just focusing on weeding. I don't even listen to music while I'm doing these things. I just like to be in the moment. But you could also, maybe you do like to listen to music. Noticing leaves, noticing the clouds outside, kind of making a concerted effort to be present, to be here now. So both of these are super important. Make sure in your own practice, you're not only doing one of them. And then in terms of developing your own practice, think about setting the scene. When will you practice? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think about, for me, if I don't do it in the morning, it's pretty much never going to happen. So I have a morning routine where, I wake up, I read the news, I check my work emails. Both of these are probably womp. And then I have my 15, 20 minutes, sometimes only 5 minutes of seated practice, just me. Consider setting a reminder on your phone. Protect the time, even just 5 minutes or so each day can be great. Commit to and reward yourself for this behavior change. Would it be helpful to get an accountability buddy from your team? And then remember, distractions will happen. No big deal. Ideally, I turn off my phone ringer. I figure if, hell breaks loose during those 15 minutes, so be it. I'll deal with it later. There were times, though, when I felt that I wasn't able to do that. So if that's not something that you can do, that's okay. There could be a distraction. Distracted, deal with the phone call, come right back to it. And then here's some apps to support today's wellness. I love all 4 of these apps. Calm, Insight Timer, Headspace, and then 365 Gratitude can be a really great one too. And then some questions to take with you. How will you bring a lens of mindfulness to your team? And how can you encourage mindfulness on your team? So in summary, Use mindfulness to make effective leadership decisions free from impulse, judgment, fear. Make meaning at work and in your career by connecting with your big why. Why are you doing this now? Grow resilience and leadership through mindfulness practice. In a crisis, put on your own oxygen mask first to attend to your own emotional needs, which can be radical acceptance, half smile, willing hands, turning the mind again and again, willingness, and then use skills to motivate and help your staff effectively. And then develop your own practice, just 5 minutes a day. And then here are all of these references. So mindfulness to improve psychological distress, physical health outcomes, and then the brain differences. So if you're interested in a further geek out, those are there for you. So thank you for having me. I'm going to stop the big share and see if there are any questions.
Dr. O'Hare, thank you so much. And before you stop the big share, someone requested, would you mind going back to the page with the apps?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Sorry. Perfect. Thank you so much. Dr. O'Hare, that was absolutely wonderful. I am sort of one of those people who tends to respond with emotions. And so I am definitely going to work on that middle ground. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And so as a reminder, we have some questions that people submitted before we got started when registering today. So we'll start with those. But for all of our attendees today, please feel free to type any questions you have in the question and answer box.
And should I stop share so it's just us, or?
Yeah, that's great. I think that's perfect now. Thank you.
Okay. Yay.
Let's see. So you did touch on a lot of the questions that came in before the program. Let's see. So we'll hop right into it. Actually, you hit all of them, so that's great.
I've seen the first one, the well-known mindfulness-based trainings. I can't tell you how amazing our own Myrna Brand Center at Jefferson is. If I put things in the chat, can everyone see this?
The general audience cannot, but I think if you actually what we can do, if we make a note, then I'm happy to send out an email.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's well worth doing just like a 12-week training in mindfulness-based stress reduction. I've done this like 4 different times, but down at Duke, which is my alma mater. And mindfulness-based stress reduction, it's life-changing. It's great.
Is there a difference between MBSR and MBCT?
Yeah, so MBSR is like a whole package, and it's used often in healthcare, and a lot of healthcare workers get trained in this as well. Now, it is fairly intensive. It's 12 weeks. There's also there's a weekend retreat, silent retreat, which I love that, but could seem like a lot. Mindfulness-based cognitive therapy is more of a kind of psychotherapy technique. So that's more like a treatment that you might want to seek out if you wanted to do one-on-one therapy. Whereas MBSR is like a kind of big group format, less so like talking about your own issues, although there is some room for that, much more kind of just learning techniques.
Have there ever been any, I guess, as leaders, we always want to be better for our people that report to us. So are there I'm almost thinking I don't want to say icebreakers because I hate icebreakers with meetings, but maybe a good way to set an intention for a meeting or a good way to sort of bring that into daily life.
Yeah. Okay. I love this question because like how to make it more practical. I forget that not everyone lives in my world, which is like everything is psychotherapy. And I could say to my students, we're going to start with a 20-minute body-centered mindfulness. They'd all be like, great. I forget that that's not the rest of the world. So yeah, you can think about at the beginning of a meeting saying, we're going to start with a 2-minute breath focused exercise to get us all kind of on the same page. And that could be something super simple. Breathe in 1, breathe out 2, continue until you get to 10, start again at 1. It doesn't have to be like woo-woo. It can just be very kind of practical. Or another really good one that I've had success with on my team too is asking your team members. So put on the agenda for your team meeting. We're going to do an exercise that's about connecting with your big why and asking people why are you in this field? Why are you doing this job? And really accepting all big whys. I mean, getting a paycheck, that could be a great big why, but then kind of go further. So why? Why is that important? Well, showing up for my family, supporting my family, providing for my kids, that kind of thing. So if you can connect your reports to their big why, people will actually be more motivated to do their work.
Awesome. And there's a sort of, I think maybe a half question. And so someone suggested the Relaxed Melodies app, I believe. But then they started to say,
Mm.
can you speak to the feeling of being walked over if you? And
Oh,
so I'm wondering, is walked over a technique or is that?
oh, I don't know.
So if you're still on the call to ask her this question, please feel free to finish that thought.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm
Um,
intrigued.
and in the meantime, someone has asked, how would someone go about training to actually become certified in
Mhm.
MBSR?
So step one is definitely is just doing the regular training. Definitely hit up the Myrna Brand Center. It is great. And I think during the pandemic, you can also do this over telehealth, which might make things a lot easier because it is. I think it's like a 90-minute commitment. I think it's once a week after work. But being able to do it over telehealth might be great. So that's the first step, is to do the actual MBSR training. And at the training, they'll tell you more about kind of the certificate pathway.
And we have the second half of the question, and it's a great
Oh,
one. So I'm
good.
so glad. Thank
Okay,
you for
cliffhanger.
finishing that thought. So can you speak to what happens if you get walked over because you give in to the
Uh,
stresses? So sort of the lizard brain, I guess, takes
yes.
over.
Okay. I mean, what I have to say on this subject in terms of my personal experience of this will not fit into 6 minutes, but yeah, I feel like that this can happen a lot. And I don't know, I think about being a leader who's also a woman, I feel like this kind of stuff is much more common than I would like it to be. And I feel like there's, at meetings, oftentimes I start to speak and someone else speaks at the same time and they keep going. And there can be this like, "Oh, I'm getting like stepped on," or, getting kind of erased. And giving into like whatever, just like what you're saying, like whatever lizard brain reaction, which could be, unmuting and "I'm speaking," or it could be like turning off my video and just feeling kind of like I give up. Or it could be, one of my favorites is I'll put a private message in the chat to one of my colleagues, like talked over by a white man, big surprise. But every now and then I won't actually send it just to that colleague and I'll send it to reply all. Oops. So I think about like all of these things that all these behaviors that to me are like lizard brain. I don't want to be someone who is like, um, you know, stirring up bad feeling on my team. And yet sometimes it's just impossible to contain it. And I feel like it blurts out. That said, those are often the days when I look back and I'm like, I skipped my morning meditation. So I really do think that accessing Wise Mind can just get a little bit of space from kind of any sort of urgency to respond.
That's definitely that is what I am taking away from today is finding wise mind and taking that moment to put separation between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Dr. O'Hare, I cannot thank you enough for spending your lunchtime with us today. And thanks to everyone who joined us today. Um, we hope that all of you will join us again for another future Jefferson alumni program, all of which you can find on our website at jefferson.edu /alumni events. And Dr. O'Hare, hopefully you'll join us again in the future as
I
well.
would love to. This is great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely rest of your day.
Bye.